Hello, YouTubers. I hope you had a wonderful Halloween. Here we are on the first day of November 2016. The year is just flying by. I have got a whole pile of news to bring you today. My goodness gracious, it's been stacking up. I did several breaking stories last night. I hope you got a chance to listen to those, and if not, that'll give you something to do today. The first story that I have for you right now, though, it's off of Regated. Getting the hamster to catch up here. Let's see. It says Hillary Clinton has some weird Russian conspiracies. Hillary Clinton has had a poor week with the FBI reopening their investigation into her private email server. Her response is to trash Comey and claim Russia has close ties to Donald Trump. During an investigation into the top Clinton aide Huma Abedin's husband Anthony Weiner's alleged sexting of a minor, a trove of 650,000 emails were found to be backed up on a laptop used by both Abedin and Weiner. That the new batch of emails likely have classified material. The Clinton camp response was to attack the integrity of FBI Director James Comey. They claim that he is acting in a partisan way the election, when only months prior they were singing his praises after not recommending charges against Secretary Clinton, did not condemn the actions of the FBI. As the Clinton campaign and her surrogates continue to attack the FBI, they have also found a new but familiar target, Russia. Here's a sample of Hillary Clinton's Twitter Russophobia from today. Hillary Clinton tweeted, "Ask yourself in a crisis, who would you trust? Who would you listen to for good advice? Keep a level head and make the right call." And another tweet, she says, U.S. intelligence has confirmed the Russian government is directing cyber attacks against the U.S. to influence the outcome of our election. Another one, she says, U.S. intelligence, or let's see, I just got that one. The next one says, why would Putin want Trump to win? The nice things he said about him, adopt pro-Kremlin policies, or his business dealings. And then she tweets, why would Putin want Trump to win? The nice things. Oh, okay, we've read that. All right. And the next one is, with the election just 8 days away, Trump should immediately disclose all his ties and connections with the Kremlin and its associates. FBI Comey's, this is off of CNBC. It says FBI Comey's opposed naming Russians, citing an election timing source. And it's FBI Director James Comey argued privately that it was too close to Election Day for the U.S. government to name Russia as meddling in the election. Oh Lord! And I mean this this little Twitter war, it goes on and on and on. Sounds like Hillary didn't have anything to do today except lay on Twitter, did she? Okay, it says, make no mistake about it, this was another coordinated planned attack on Donald Trump, much like the infamous Mikado attack. It was a coordination between Clinton campaign and friendly media outlets. That notice becomes clear when Hillary Clinton managed to speak in a line about Alicia Mikado at the first presidential debate, and the campaign had an ad ready-made to be released the next day. Likewise, many media outlets were either working on or quickly released profiles of the former Miss Universe star. For the Clinton campaign, no one buys the Russian conspiracies. Here's how to plant a Russian narrative for the unaware. Number one, write a BuzzFeed like bullet point list of conspiratorial links between Trump and Russia. Number two, keep on using said bullet points as campaign talking points regardless of fact. Number three, go on a Trumpian tweet storm accusing the Republican nominee of being a puppet of the Kremlin. Number four, continuously link to a far left website where the article is in Clintonian terms, light on facts and high on innuendo. Number five, have your surrogates go on the media and harangue Donald Trump as a Russian-backed puppet. Justice published New York Times report refutes the entire attack line. From the Times, it says law enforcement officials say that none of the investigations so far have found any link between Mr. Trump and the Russian government, and even the hacking into Democratic emails, FBI and intelligence officials now believe was aimed at disrupting the presidential election rather than electing Mr. Trump. Supporters of Mrs. Clinton have argued that Mr. Trump's evidence affinity for Russian President Vladimir Putin. Mr. Trump has called him a great leader and echoed his policies toward NATO, Ukraine, and the war in Syria, and the hacks of leading Democrats like John D. Podesta, the chairman of the Clinton campaign, are clear indications that Russia has taken sides in the presidential race and that voters should know that what the FBI has found. As Trump said in the debate, no puppet. Own interest of information gathering and typical state espionage is hacking politically related servers in order to find any possible dirt on the United States. The United States has done the same thing towards other countries, allies, and enemies alike. There is only one candidate in this election that has certifiable ties to Russia in this campaign, and that's Hillary Clinton. As the WikiLeaks tweet says, John Podesta and Hillary Clinton were both heavily involved in the Uranium One deal, where Russia purchased 20% of the United States uranium reserves. This Breitbart article goes on further into detail with the links. Perhaps the Clintons should stop projecting their Russophobia on Donald Trump and address their serious issues with regards to hosting classified data on unsecure private servers that actually endanger national security. If Trump's marketing server with a Russian bank, the Russians will shockingly find out that Trump's National Doral Miami's beautiful public golf course located in southern Florida that provides world-class golf at reasonable rates. If Hillary Clinton's private server was communicating with the Russians will shockingly find out all the United States' most closely guarded secrets. In 2012, Republican nominee Mitt Romney was chastised for calling Russia our largest geographical foe. Obama said that the 1980s called they want their foreign policy back. Only 4 years later, it is now Democrat nominee raising the red flag and declaring all-out war against the Russians. It is scary hearkening back to the McCarthyism of the 1950s when political opponents' careers would be ruined simply at the allegation of being a communist or Russian spy. Now Hillary Clinton proclaims to the American public that not only are the Russians trying to rig the election for their preferred candidate, but that said candidate is a puppet of the Russians. And it ends it up with a tweet from Shane on Regated, and he says Hillary Clinton's new Red Scare is neo-McCarthyism. 61% of her tweets today are about Russians and supposed connection with Russia. Man, I mean, Lord have mercy. When she can't take the blame for what she has done with the server, she wants to blame everything on Trump and the Russians, and Lord, who knows who all else she wants to blame things on. My goodness gracious. Next one we have here is off of conservativetribune.com. Kaine forced to cancel key event due to lack of attendance. Scroll up here so I can read it to you. Here we go. Democrat vice presidential nominee Tim Kaine announced Wednesday the sudden cancellation of a campaign rally that had originally been scheduled in Sarasota, Florida. And as reported by WFLA, reason for the cancellation, apparently preferring instead to leave his supporters wondering what had happened. Judging by the pitiful performance of his prior rallies, however, the reason seemed obvious. He already knew that barely anybody would show up, just like barely anybody had shown up for the event held in West Palm Beach at the start of the week. In fact, only an estimated 30 people attended that event, and a large number of those folks were reporters and Democrat operatives. And there is a video in this if you want to see how pitiful it was. The event was an embarrassing mess, which, like the campaign of both Kaine and his running mate, Democrat president nominee Hillary Clinton. As conservative commentator Kevin Jackson noted on his blog, The Black Sphere, nobody wants to see Tim Kaine or Hillary Clinton or any other leftist stooge that they have booked. In other words, enthusiasm for either candidate, and the reasons for this were many. They were deliriously boring. They were touting lousy ideas, and at least one of them was marred by endless scandals involving corruption at the highest levels of government. Even the Democrat presidential nominees' events were failing to attract large crowds. Meanwhile, opponent GOP nominee Donald Trump was busy holding events chock-a-block with more fans than a rock star. The difference is like night and day. Of course, most polls still showed Kaine and Clinton leading Trump and running mate Indiana governor. But remember, polls can be very misleading. So there you have that one. The next one that we have is off of zerohedge.com. And I'm waiting for the hamster to catch up. Lord have mercy, he's running like all get out. Poor little legs just a-winding. Here we go. It's WikiLeaks warns it is launching phase 3 of its election coverage. On Sunday night, WikiLeaks enigmatically tweeted that it would launch phase 3 of its U.S. election coverage in the coming week. The site on notice Sunday evening in a tweet that also included a plea for donations. And we'll get it to go down here. Let's see. It says, we commence phase 3 of our U.S. election coverage next week. You can contribute, and it gives a website address in this, and it says, website announced moments ago. Noted. Well, either too much or not enough. Come on, hamster. As The Hill noted, Wiki did not provide information about what the third phase entails or if there are still more revelations to come. As a reminder, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange currently finds himself in the Ecuador embassy where his internet access has been revoked for the duration of the presidential campaign to avoid the appearance of intervention. Supporters, now including a number of disgruntled GOP nominee Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders supporters, promptly replied with tweets expressing hope that phase 3 would ultimately damage Democratic presidential campaign. User Corrupt Media responded with photoshopped estimating what CNN coverage of Clinton being escorted to jail would look like. Clinton-related documents would further irk a campaign still reeling from FBI Director James Comey's announcement on Friday that new emails related to the Clinton server probe had been discovered. But there is at least some reason to believe WikiLeaks could release materials that is not solely Clinton-related. Julian Assange, the head of WikiLeaks, has stated that he would publish information from Trump if the site any. WikiLeaks has already posted hacked emails from the Democratic National Committee and Clinton campaign chief John Podesta. The former led to the resignation of former DNC chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz after it was revealed that the DNC was acting to prevent Bernie Sanders' nomination. The former has led to a series of dramatic revelations into the strategic operations of the Clinton campaign, with the most damaging emails exposing the Clinton Foundation and WJC's consulting outfit, Teneo, as an influence peddling, pay-to-play organization, as noted most recently in Doug Band to John Podesta. If the story gets out, we are screwed. Let's see here. Trying to get this to scroll down a little bit. Yep, I think that's the end of that article. Okay, we'll move on to the next one then. This is off of conservativetribune.com. Disaster. Hillary herself helped raise money donated to wife of FBI director, deputy director. Lord have mercy. During the fall of 2015, a political run by Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe $500,000 to state senator campaign of Jill McCabe, wife of the FBI official who later oversaw the investigation into former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server. Issue were Clinton's deep ties to both McAuliffe and the Common Good U.S. not known. The UK Daily Mail explained that Clinton had headlined a major fundraising event for the PAC shortly before it began funneling money into McCabe's campaign. Months that followed, 5- and 6-figure donations poured into Common Good VA from out-of-state Clinton supporters and aides, the Daily Mail added. Furthermore, at least 5 employees of the PAC within the past 2 years to accept senior positions in the former Secretary of State's presidential election campaign. Combined, these facts made it seem as if the money provided by the PAC to Virginia senatorial candidate Jill McCabe's wife of FBI McCabe was a payoff, according to Ken Bohm, National League and Policy Center. The fact that Hillary Clinton's inner circle was raising substantial funds for Governor McAuliffe's PAC, and this same PAC gave close to $500,000 to the campaign of the wife of the senior FBI official involved in the Clinton investigation, sure looks like a payoff, he said. The timing of the donations was especially relevant. The New York Post, PAC began funneling money campaign approximately 2 months after the FBI began investigating Clinton in July of 2015. On July 5th of 2016, FBI Director James Comey announced that the agency would not be recommending criminal charges be filed against her. Jill McCabe's husband has reportedly been promoted to deputy director. So there you have that one. It is off of conservativetribune.com. And I'm waiting for the hamster. Come on, buddy. Folks, that they should just cancel the election now. Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump told a crowd in Toledo, Ohio on Thursday that Democratic rival Hillary Clinton and her policies were so bad that the election should be canceled and handed over to him. This is just thinking to myself right now, we should just cancel the election and give it to Trump, Trump said as the crowd cheered. What are we even having it for? Trump added, saying Clinton's policies are so bad. There is video in this if you want to take a look at the video. And it goes on, says it's not just her policies are bad, it's practically everything she says and does. Trump, as we close in on the general election and as polls continue to show Trump lagging behind Clinton, humor about everything. Trump's refusal to give up has carried him this far. He's in the race to win it, regardless of what polls may indicate. He and the rest of the country have seen huge crowds that have come to hear him speak, crowds that dwarf the size of Clinton's crowds. Knows that the mainstream media, Democrats and establishment Republicans don't want him to win. Whatever they can to minimize his popularity in an attempt to discourage voters, but those tactics might not be working. Ohio, a must-win battleground state for Trump, has seen a drop in jobs because of trade deals. Trump has promised that he would bring back jobs to America if he won the election, and jobs are an issue that many citizens are passionate about. Because the election won't be canceled, and of course shouldn't be, it's important to get out and vote for reasons. But one of the most important is to simply save the future of our country. So there you have that article. I don't know, that to me, it just kind of borderlines on being arrogant. Don't get too arrogant. The election ain't over, you know. We're still in the horse race, so don't get too cocky about it. This is off of westernjournalism.com. Paul Ryan renews call for Clinton to be classified briefings after FBI reopens the investigation. Well, that should have happened a long time ago, but okay. We'll get this scroll down here. The FBI's decision prompted Ryan to blast Clinton's actions again, demanding that she be denied her access to classified material because of her lack of discretion with classified material. Yet again, Hillary Clinton had to blame. She was entrusted with some of our nation's most important secrets, and she betrayed that trust by carelessly mishandling highly classified information, he said. Letter to Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, joining several other Republicans who argued that Clinton shouldn't have access to sensitive intelligence information after her email transgressions. Senator Cory Gardner, Republican of Colorado, and Senate Majority Whip John Cornyn, Republican of Texas, introduced a bill that would revoke the security clearance of Clinton. Other state Republicans went one step further, asking that Clinton's top aides also have their clearances revoked. In his letter, Ryan pleaded with federal intelligence officials to deny the former Secretary of State briefings during the fall campaign, practice for both parties' nominees. As you know, FBI investigation of Hillary Clinton's unauthorized personal email found substantial evidence that Secretary Clinton and her staff were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive classified information, Ryan wrote. That other officials, even including Comey, would face immediate sanctions if they acted as Clinton had. He also pointed out that Clapper has no legal obligation to share classified information with Clinton. Clapper responded in a letter saying that he does not intend to withhold briefings from any officially nominated eligible candidate. The President and Vice President receive these briefings by virtue of their status as candidates and do not require separate security clearance before their briefings. Clapper wrote to Ryan, briefings for the candidate will be provided on an even-handed, nonpartisan basis. When news broke Friday that the FBI had decided to reopen its investigation, Ryan renewed his call for officials to suspend Clinton from further security briefings, echoing Comey's words, careless, to describe her actions. This decision, long overdue, is the result of her reckless use of private email server and her refusal to be forthcoming with federal investigations, he said. I renew my call for Director of National Intelligence to suspend all classified briefings for Secretary Clinton until this matter is fully resolved. So there you have that. And it's not even just the emails, it's her mouth. I mean, she stood right in a public debate on national television and gave away state secrets. What does she say when she gets around leaders of other countries? I mean, how much information does she just blurt out because she doesn't see it as being a secret? Or doesn't care, or is treasonous? Lord have mercy. Next one I have is off of conservativetribune.com. Shock. NSA can recover all of Hillary's deleted emails. It says the 33,000 emails that former Secretary of State Clinton famously deleted, yes, those emails, aren't lost at all. They're right under our noses, or better put, up in the cloud. And the National Security Agency has been sitting on them the entire time, according to a news story from the International Business Times. Kim.com, the internet entrepreneur known for bypassing on security as a teenager and longtime critic of their biased enforcement standards, said, I know where Hillary Clinton's emails are, and I know how to get them legally. How powerful is this NSA? This secretive agency employs thousands of people and has literally weaponized our national information technology infrastructure. Most of the most powerful espionage tools are created by the National Security Agency's elite group of hackers. If there is anyone on the planet who best understands the NSA's clandestine capabilities, it's Kim.com. The international encryption expert and open source advocate wanted people to know that there was a clear path to recovering Clinton's emails that she has claimed were deleted because of their personal nature. And it says, You can see the list here. How to get Hillary Clinton's deleted emails. Now, step 1, go to nsa.gov. Number 2, contact Mike Rogers. Number 3, ask Mike to open X key score. Number 4, put in this selector, which is HDR22 at clintonmail.com. Step 5 is access all emails Clinton sent or received in the last 7 years. They're all stored in the NSA spy cloud in Utah. Congress request the emails from the NSA. Happy birthday, Hillary. I can't make this stuff up. My God. Clinton began using the now famous private server at her home in 2009 using X keyscore. Revealed by Edward Snowden, NSA analysts could drill deeper into data as far back as 2012 when Clinton served as Secretary of State, the Business Times reported. Congress spent millions of dollars investigating Hillary Clinton's missing emails and the illegal use of a private server, and the liberal media, rather than reporting on results of those investigations, had instead tried to use the conflict between Democrats and Republicans as a sideshow to distract from the issues that really matter to Americans. Sacred obligation is to uphold and defend the Constitution from all enemies. It appears that Congress doesn't realize that their biggest enemy is just down the street. Oh my goodness gracious. Next one that we have here is off of MSN.com. Yeah, you're going to love this. Trump's missing emails. Over the course of decades, Donald Trump's companies have systematically destroyed or hidden thousands of emails, digital records, and paper documents demanded in official proceedings, often in defiance of court orders. These tactics, exposed by a Newsweek review of thousands of pages of court filings, judicial orders, and affidavits from an array of court cases, have enraged judges, prosecutors, opposing lawyers, and many ordinary citizens entangled in litigation with Trump. In each instance, Trump and entities he controlled are also erected numerous hurdles that made lawsuits drag on for years, forcing courtroom opponents to spend huge sums of money in legal fees as they struggled, sometimes in vain, to obtain records. This behavior of particular import, given Trump's frequent condemnations of Hillary Clinton, his Democratic opponent, for having deleted more than 30,000 emails from a server she used during her time as Secretary of State. Lawyers have said all those emails were personal. Trump has suggested repeatedly on the campaign trail that they were government documents Clinton was trying to hide, and that destroying them constituted a crime. The allegation, which the FBI concluded was not supported by any evidence, is a crowd pleaser at Trump rallies. Supporters chanting, "Lock her up." Trump's use of deception and untruthful affidavits, as well as hiding or improper destruction of documents, dates back to at least 1973, when the Republican nominee, his father, and their real estate company battled the federal government over civil charges that they refused to rent apartments to African Americans. The Trump strategy was simple: deny, impede, and delay while destroying documents the court had ordered them to hand over. Filed its case in October, Trump attacked. He falsely declared to reporters that the feds had no evidence he and his father discriminated against minorities, but instead were attempting to force them to lease to welfare recipients who couldn't pay their rent. Attempts to slow down the federal case were at times non-sequential. Trump submitted an affidavit contending the government had engaged in some unspecified wrongdoing by releasing statements to the press on the day it brought the case without first having any formal communications with him. He'd learned of the complaint only while listening to his car radio that morning, but Trump's sworn statement was a lie. Court records show that the government had filed its complaint at 10 a.m. and phoned him almost immediately afterward. The government later notified the media with a press release. Prosecutors responded to Trump's affidavit by showing he had fudged his claim by using the term formal communication, an acknowledgement they said he had received what only he would characterize as an informal notification, which they described as an intentional effort to mislead the court and the public. Slowed the case. It required government lawyers to appear in court false charge. The Trumps had more delaying tactics. Trump announced in a press conference that his family and their company were bringing $100 million countersuit against the government for libel. Anonymous community leaders, he said, had been calling and writing letters expressing shock at the government's outrageous lies. Once again, motions, replies, and hearings followed. Once again, the court threw out Trump's allegations. Trump's ignored the government's discovery demands, even through court procedure in a civil criminal case requires side use relevant documents in a timely manner. This allows for the plaintiffs or prosecutors to develop more evidence in support of their claims, as well as for defense to gather proof to fight the case against them. When litigation is filed or even contemplated, scrupulous lawyers and corporations immediately impose document retention programs or require that any shredding or disposing of records be halted. Down severe sanctions or even criminal charges of obstruction of justice against executives and companies that destroyed records because they knew they were going to be sued. Yet when the government filed its standard discovery requests, they acted as though seeking that information was outrageous. They argued in court that the procedure had no case that the prosecutors had no case and wanted to rifle through corporate files on a fishing expedition. Once again, this led to more delays, more replies, more hearings, and another specious argument thrown out of court. 6 months after the original filing, the case was nowhere because the Trumps had repeatedly ignored the deadlines to produce records and answers to questions known as interrogatories, I guess it is. When the government attorney finally telephoned a Trump lawyer to find out why, he told Trump that he was told the Trumps had not even begun preparing their answers and had no plans to do so. The Trumps also postponed and blocked depositions, refused to provide description of their records as required, and would not turn over any documents. Finally, under subpoena, Trump appeared for a short deposition. When asked about the missing documents, he made a shocking admission. The Trumps had been destroying their corporate records for the previous 6 months and had no document retention program. They had conducted no inspections to determine which files might have been sought in the discovery request or might otherwise be related to the case. Instead, in order to save space, Trump testified, his company had been tossing documents into the shredder and garbage. The government dashed to court seeking sanctions against the Trumps. Prosecutors asked the judge to allow them to search through the corporate files or simply declare the Trumps in judgment against them. The judge opted to allow the government to access the company offices so they could find records themselves. In 3 letters and 3 phone calls, the government notified the Trumps that his inspection would take place on June the 12th of 1974. When they arrived at the Trump offices, Trump was there, but he and everyone else were surprised that the prosecutors had come and refused to allow them access to documents without their defense lawyers present. A prosecutor called those lawyers, but they were not in their offices. The frustrated prosecutors then gave up and headed back to court. Trump's strategy was simple: deny, impede, and delay. While destroying documents the court had ordered them to hand over. Then hit with a new delaying tactic. The Trumps submitted a filing based on statements by Trump that radically misrepresented what had occurred that day. He claimed the prosecutor, Donna Goldstein, had arrived at the company without notifying the Trumps' counsel, refused to telephone their lawyer, and demanded access to Trump's office. The prosecutor accompanied the Trumps' claim by 5 stormtroopers, then banged on doors throughout the office, insisting she and her team be allowed to swarm haphazardly through the Trumps' files and to totally disrupt their daily business routine. In a move that caused another huge delay, the Trumps claimed that Goldstein had been threatening Trump employees who were potential witnesses. In several instances, the employees signed affidavits stating they had been subjected to abuse by Goldstein. They denied it when they were forced to testify. Even one of the government's key witnesses, Thomas Miranda, who told the government that Trump's instructed managers to flag applications from minorities and that he was afraid the families would physically harm him, suddenly announced that the prosecutor had threatened him and that he had never provided any evidence against the Trumps. These allegations of misconduct, which demanded sanctions against the government for abusing its power, required more hearings. Once again, the Trump claims went nowhere. In June of 1975, more than 18 months after the government filed the case with the Trumps, still withholding potential relevant records, the two sides struck a settlement. Like all civil settlement, did not contain an admission of guilt, compelled the Trumps to comply with federal housing regulations against discrimination, adopt specific policies to advance that goal, to notify the community that apartments would be rented to anyone, regardless of race. The Trumps ignored these requirements and still refused to rent apartments to minorities, something the government proved by sending African Americans and not Hispanic Caucasians to pose as applicants. The government brought another complaint against the Trumps in 1978, who then agreed to a new settlement. In that case, the government had the financial wherewithal to fight back against abuses of the courts and the discovery process by the Trump family. But many private litigants who have to spend their own money and hire their own lawyers have been ground down by Trump's litigation as warfare without rules approach. Courts are loath to impose sanctions when litigants fail to comply with discovery demands in order to hurry cases along. Judges frequently issue new orders setting deadlines and requirements on parties that fail to produce documents. But Trump and his company did get sanctioned for lying about evidence, or let's try this again, did get sanctioned for lying about the existence of a crucial document to avoid losing a suit. 9. A group of plaintiffs claimed Trump duped them into buying apartments in a Fort Lauderdale, Florida development by portraying it as one of his projects. The fine print of the dense and legalistic purchase contract, however, revealed that Trump licensed his name to the developers, and when the project hit financial snags, he walked away from it. In their initial disclosure in 2011, he said they had no insurance to cover any of their liability in this case. That was important because an insurance policy lets the plaintiffs calculate how much money a defendant can pay in a settlement without suffering any direct financial consequences. In other words, that insurance lets the plaintiff know how aggressively to pursue a settlement, knowing the defendant will have some losses covered by the policy. At the same time, a settlement in the then prominent case could have been disastrous for Trump of similar lawsuits because he had licensed his name to developers around the world for projects that later collapsed. Trump had marketed the developments as his own, a claim contradicted by the sales contracts. In any of these cases, might have encouraged other people who had lost deposits in a Trump-marketed development to file lawsuits against him. Trump testified that officials with his company had been tossing records into the shredder and garbage. 2 years later, after denying that Trump had insurance that could have been used to settle the Fort Lauderdale litigation, one of his lawyers made a startling admission. Trump and his company had been insured all along for up to $5 million. But no more. The policy had recently dried up. Stunned, the apartment buyers filed a motion seeking sanctions against Trump and his company, arguing that the case may very well have settled long ago had the plaintiffs been provided with the policy in a timely manner, according to a court filing. Alan Garten, general counsel at the Trump Organization for the past decade, said that at the time, the original disclosure, the company's lawyers did not believe that the policy covered any potential liability in the lawsuit, which he said was an error on his part. This solely fell on me. If anyone's to blame for that, it's me, he said. It was completely an innocent oversight, and it was my innocent oversight. Garten said the other cases in his article preceded his time at the company, and he did not know the facts surrounding them. In that case, Federal Judge Kathleen Williams ruled in favor of the plaintiffs and ordered Trump to pay limited legal fees for failing to disclose the policy, then held in reserve the possibility of imposing additional sanctions. The case subsequently settled. Perhaps the worst legal case involving Trump and his companies hiding and destroying emails and other records involving developer Cordish Co's, which through an affiliate called Power Plant Entertainment LLC, built 2 American Indian casinos in Florida. In January of 2005, Trump Hotels and Casino Resorts sued in a state court almost immediately after the opening of the casinos, which both operate under the Hard Rock brand. In his lawsuit, Trump claimed that the companies had unlawfully conspired with one of his former associates to cheat him out of the deal. He argued that the project should be turned over to him. Negotiations with the tribe and the construction of the casinos had taken many years. That the state's 4-year statute of limitations had passed before Trump finally got around to filing his lawsuit. If Power Plant could prove Trump knew in early 2000 that his former associate was working on a Hard Rock deal, the case would have been thrown out of court. Therefore, the statute of limitations starts ticking down when plaintiffs learn they have been swindled. He learned about the deal in January of 2001, about the time the groundbreaking and more than 3 years before he filed suit. However, the defendants contended he had been informed of the projects in 1999. Trump offered no evidence in support of his contention except his word. So the opposing lawyers filed extensive discovery demands, seeking emails, computer files, calendars, and other records that might prove he knew about the casino deal before 2000. A full year into the case, Trump and his company, Trump Hotels, produced only a single box of documents, many of which were not relevant, and no emails, digital files, phone records, calendars, or even documents Trump lawyers had promised to turn over. Were still unanswered. Lawyers for Power Plant obtained a court order compelling Trump and his company to comply with the discovery demands and hand over the relevant information and documents. In the 6th response, Trump's lawyers argued that the emails and other electronic documents had not been produced because the company didn't have them. They claimed it had no servers until around 2001, the year Trump claimed he had learned of the power plant project. Trump Hotels had no policy regarding retaining documents until 2003. In other words, they hadn't turned over any emails because no emails had been saved on a Trump server. Judge Jeffrey Steinfeld Judge Jeffrey Streetfelt reacted with near disbelief. "I don't have the patience for this," he said. "This has been going on for too long to have to listen, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to this double talk. There has to adjustment from the plaintiff." Trump executives to file sworn statements attesting to how their email systems had worked from 1996 onward. In response, Trump Hotels filed an affidavit from one of its information technology managers stating it had no servers prior to 2001. That was false, and by deposing numerous IT specialists with 2 Trump companies, the Trump Organization and Trump Hotels, lawyers for Power Plant gradually chipped away at it. Finally, during a deposition 9 months after he had signed a deceptive affidavit, the same Trump executive admitted his assertions in it were untrue. In fact, an IBM Domino server for emails and other files had been installed in 1999. This for Power Plant contended that Trump had learned of the casino deal. Prior to that, as early as 1997, the Trump Corporation's offsite operated by a company called Jersey Cape, according to sworn testimony by one of the Trump IT experts. The following year, the Trump Organization and Trump Hotels moved to another email provider, Technology 21. These startling revelations changed nothing, however, because there was no trove of documents. The Trump records had been destroyed. Back in 2001, that Trump might want to file a lawsuit, his companies had deleted emails and other records without checking if they might be evidence in this case. In 2003, the company wiped clear the data from everyone's computers every year. Lawyers for Trump Hotels had never sent out unusual communication issued during litigation instructing employees to stop destroying records that might be related to this case. Continued, and backup tapes were reused, thus erasing data they held. Power plant lawyers also discovered that after the lawsuit was filed, Trump Hotels disposed of a key witness computer, the data on it. Data from everyone's computers at Trump's company was wiped clear every year. In subsequent filings, Power Plant maintained that Trump Hotels had intentionally deceived the court in its March 2006 filing when it claimed it had located no emails because at that point, it had not yet conducted any searches of its computer system. Trump Hotel executives did not instruct their IT departments to back up computer tapes until 2007. And even then, the job wasn't done, depositions show. And when computer specialists finally attempted to electronically locate any relevant documents that had survived the flurry of deletions, the procedures were absurdly inadequate. Documents, the technology team was told to use only two search terms: the name of the tribe and the last name of a former Trump associate. So even if there was an email that stated Donald Trump learned the full details of the Hard Rock Casino deal in Florida in 1999, it would not have been found by this search. With all this proof that Trump Hotels had ignored every court order and filed false documents, Power Plant asked Judge to either impose sanctions or allow its own expert to search for relevant digital records. It had done nothing improper, although its lawyers acknowledged having made some mistakes. Field ordered Trump Hotels to make its servers and computer systems available for inspection by a computer forensics consulting firm. That review showed there was no digital data in the computers, servers, or backup tapes prior to January of 2001, the very month Trump claimed to have learned of the Florida casino deal. Of sanctions growing, Trump Hotels dropped the suit a few months later, in part because the company's financial troubles. A company involved in the power plant case agreed to purchase one of Trump's struggling casinos in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and included as part of the deal a requirement that litigation be ended. This review of Trump's many decades of abusing the judicial system, ignoring judges, disregarding rules, destroying documents, and lying about it is not simply a sordid history lesson. Rather, it helps explain this behavior since he declared his candidacy. He promised to turn over his tax returns and his health records, just as he promised to comply with document requirements in so many lawsuits, then reneged. As a result, he has left a sparse evidentiary trail that can be used to assess his wealth, his qualifications for presidency, or even his fitness. Should voters choose him to be the next U.S. president, office as a mystery, a man who has repeatedly flouted the rules. He has solemnly told the country to trust him while refusing to produce any records to prove whether he speaks the truth or contempt for it. So there you have that. And keep in mind, that is off of MSN. So consider the source. But I think I'd still rather have him than Hillary. The next article that I have for you is PAC Review. Official favors to Morocco resulted in $28 million for the Clinton Foundation. Hillary Clinton did two huge favors for Morocco during her tenure as Secretary of State, while the Clinton Foundation accepted up to $28 million in donations from the country's ruler, King Mohammed, according to new information obtained by Daily Caller News Foundation investigative group. Clinton and Environmental Protection Agency Jackson tried to shut down the Florida-based Mosaic Company in 2011, operator of America's largest phosphate mining facility. Jackson's close ties and loyalty to the Clintons were revealed when she joined the Clinton Foundation's board of directors in 2013, just months after she left the EPA. Jackson is also close to John Podesta, Clinton's national campaign chairman. Morocco's state-owned phosphate company, OCP, would ostensibly benefited from Jackson's move to shut down Mosaic. Mohammed donated up to $15 million to the Clinton Foundation through OCP. Clinton also relaxed U.S. foreign aid and restrictions on Morocco, thus allowing U.S. funds to be used in the territory of Western Sahara, where OCP operates phosphate mining operations. The aid restrictions stem from Morocco's illegal occupation of the territory since 1974. Morocco is repeatedly condemned for seizing territory and for unilaterally extracting the country's valuable minerals, impoverishing what's left of the local Sahrawi Arabs. No nation recognizes Moroccan sovereignty over the Western Sahara, and the United Nations Security Council Legal Office and the International Court of Justice both demand that Mohammed withdraw his claim over the territory and end of minerals. An email WikiLeaks made public last week illustrated how Clinton, while acting as Secretary of State, negotiated an additional $12 million donation to the Clinton Foundation from Mohammed in return for holding the 2015 Clinton Global Initiative meeting in Marrakech, Morocco. Another $1 million payment came from OCP to cover the expenses of the CGI meeting. The regulatory assault against the U.S. phosphate industry began in earnest when Jackson launched a barrage of intimidating regulatory initiatives against Mosaic. Environmental concerns about phosphates date from 1979, but the EPA did little to address concerns related to phosphate mining until Jackson's 2011 moves. The regulatory assault on U.S. phosphate industry encompassed several agencies, including the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS. DHS aircraft flew at low altitudes over Mosaic's Central Florida operations in search of environmental problems. The EPA also threatened large Superfund penalties, which could have bankrupted Mosaic. Phosphates are essential ingredients in fertilizers used in American farming. Closing or reducing Mosaic's output would have cost tens of thousands of American jobs and injured the country's agricultural productivity. It would also leave the U.S. dependent upon foreign phosphate producers, but particularly Morocco's OCP, that mine phosphates are Russia, China, and Saudi Arabia. Representative Dennis Ross, a Republican congressman who represents the Florida district where Mosaic operates, told the DCNF he now sees why EPA went after Mosaic. Perfect sense as to why the EPA, under Lisa Jackson's tutelage, targeted Mosaic's phosphate operations in my district. I was never given any answers when I questioned Lisa Jackson about the EPA's deliberate actions against Mosaic, Ross told the DCNF. Now I know why. An environmental concern never existed. This targeting was all done as a payback to Morocco for donating millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation, Ross said. An uproar from Florida regulators, pushback from state's congressional delegation, and the agency's tenuous legal position all forced the EPA to end its threats against Mosaic. Representative Marsha Blackburn, a Tennessee Republican who is vice chairman of the House Committee on Energy and Commerce and a vocal critic of the Clinton Foundation, agreed with Ross, saying these facts seem to reveal the possibility of more pay-to-play activities at the Clinton Foundation. It would be especially troubling if the Clinton Foundation was working with the EPA to suppress American phosphate industry in favor of Morocco. The Clinton Foundation should be forthcoming about their dealings with the Moroccan government and the American phosphate industry. Clinton's 2012 support of a rider on the U.S. foreign aid bill permitting foreign aid to be sent to Western Sahara arguably legitimized Moroccan occupation of territory and depopulated the Sahrawi Arabs. Native Moroccans were sent into the country by the government to extract the minerals. The writer, approved by Clinton, said that U.S. foreign aid funds may be used in regions and territories administered by Morocco, meaning the Western Sahara. The Western Sahara is classified as non-self-governing territory under international law. Previously, United States excluded Western Sahara from bilateral assistance to avoid seeming to endorse Moroccan control, said Eugene Kontrabich, a professor at Northwestern University School of Law, in a legal review of occupied territories around the world. UN Security Council under Secretary for Legal Affairs said in January of 2002 that if further exploration and exploitation activities were to proceed in disregard of the interests and wishes of the people of Western Sahara, they would be in violation of the international law principles applied to mineral resource activities in non-self-governing territories. A December 10th, 2015 report by the International Court of Justice ruled that the sovereignty of the Kingdom of Morocco over Western Sahara is not recognized by the European Union or its member states, or more generally by the UN, and the absence of any international mandate capable of justifying Moroccan presence on the territory. But none of that mattered to former President Bill Clinton, who said nothing about the world's condemnation of Morocco's exploitation of the area for its phosphate industry while speaking at the Clinton Foundation 2015 Marrakech CGI conference. Instead, he praised it. The Moroccans who are here will tell you in the last several years they have come to Saudi Arabia of phosphates and what they have done with it to diversify their economy and to make it part of a comprehensive strategy instead of another example of resource curse is very impressive indeed, Clinton said. Hillary Clinton sold her soul when they accepted that money, reported Politico the day after Marrakech CGI conference. The next article that I have for you is off of BizPac Review, and it says Trey Gowdy spanks Dems, Hillary, and hack Harry Reid over FBI probe. I didn't know Mormons did drugs. It says South Carolina Representative Trey Gowdy had a simple response to the news that Senator Harry Reid accused FBI Director James Comey of violating the Hatch Act. I did not know Mormons use drugs, Gowdy told Brett Baer on Fox News Special Report Sunday. Anyone who is capable of sending out that press release has to be under the influence of something. Reid claimed in a letter so ridiculous it's nutty, even for him, that Comey might have violated the Hatch Act, which prevents FBI officials from using their position to intentionally influence an election. Thank God he's leaving, Gowdy said, adding that Hillary Clinton is responsible for her own issues. Jim Comey did not tell her to use her private server. He did not say mislead the public about whether or not you turn over all of your work emails, Gowdy said. And he certainly didn't say, Secretary Clinton, why don't you say you neither sent nor received classified information? So look, Senator Reid is a political hack and James Comey is a law enforcement officer. He's not a Republican or a Democrat. I've had my differences with him in the past, but he's not a political hack like Senator Reid is. So there you have that. Wow. This is better than any soap opera I've ever seen. Okay, next one we have is off BizPac Review. It says, now 5 FBI field offices are probing Clinton charity, adding fuel to the fire. FBI field offices in New York, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and Little Rock, Arkansas are investigating the Clinton Foundation concerning allegations of pay-to-play financial and political corruption, according to a report at the Wall Street Journal on Sunday. Mirroring information provided by former senior law enforcement official that multiple FBI investigations are underway involving potential corruption charges against the Clinton Foundation. WSJ revelation confirms what the Daily Caller News Foundation investigative group reported in August. FBI field offices in 3 cities, specifically New York, Little Rock, and Washington, D.C., were coordinating with the U.S. Attorney's work in those cities. FBI agents in Miami are also joining the probe, the DCNF has since learned. The Clinton Foundation has numerous programs operating in Haiti, the Caribbean, Latin America, and South America. Los Angeles agents had picked up information about the Clinton Foundation from an unrelated public corruption case and had issued some subpoenas for bank records related to the foundation and described the unusual field office initiative as, at times, a sprawling cross-country effort, WSJ reports. Several polls released Saturday and Sunday show a rapid deterioration of presidential nominee Hillary Clinton's lead in the wake of Friday's disclosure by FBI Director James Comey that he is reopening the email server investigation. Comey said in August that he did not believe the FBI's investigation of Clinton and her use of private servers and private email addresses to conduct official diplomatic business would be productive. Comey's announcement Friday was related to separate investigation of child pornography allegations against former Representative Anthony Weiner, a New York Democrat who's married to Clinton's closest confidant, Huma Abedin. Weiner and Abedin separated earlier this year following a third disclosure of his sexting with an underage girl. Also likely to raise new questions about Obama administration's political interference in the case was WSJ's revelation that Department of Justice officials repeatedly tried to shut down the FBI field investigations. An unidentified senior Justice Department official voiced his displeasure at finding that New York FBI agents were still openly pursuing the Clinton Foundation probe, according to WSJ. The Justice Department official was pissed off that the foundation investigation was ongoing. Are you telling me that I need to shut down a validly predicated investigation? FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe asked the unidentified official, as quoted by WSJ. Of course not, the unnamed official reportedly replied. Other agents further down the FBI chain of command, however, said agents were given much starker instruction on the case. Stand down, WSJ reported. The D.C. field office was probing financial relationships involving Terry McAuliffe before he became a Clinton Foundation board member, according to WSJ. McAuliffe, who is now Virginia's Democratic governor, is former Democratic National Committee chairman, first members of the Clinton Foundation's board of directors, and is the longest-serving director. McAuliffe is among the most effective Democratic Party fundraising agents and is part of the Clintons' inner circle. McAuliffe also gave the Clintons $13 million, enabling them to buy an 11-room mansion in New York. So there you have that. The next one we have is off BizPac Review. It says Clinton campaign circulates letter asking ex-prosecutors to criticize Comey. Hillary Clinton's camp circulated a letter to former federal prosecutors asking them to hammer FBI Director James Comey for reopening a criminal investigation into Clinton's unsecured email server 11 days before a presidential election. Like Lemmings, dozens of former prosecutors, including former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder, signed the open letter which slammed Comey for violating longstanding Justice Department guidelines about making public statements on an investigation within 60 days of an election, the Daily Beast reported. Director Comey's letter is inconsistent with prevailing department policy, and it breaks with longstanding practices followed by officials of both parties on October 30th, the letter said, see below. It says, interestingly, the open letter makes no mention of the fact that Hillary Clinton's actions were inappropriate and most likely illegal. Instead, it basically criticizes Comey for hurting her chances to get elected as president. Holder then followed up with scathing takedown of Comey in a brutal Washington Post op-ed. And there's video in this if you want to pull that up and look at that at your leisure. And the article goes on and says, the brouhaha erupted October 28th after Comey reported a criminal investigation to probe whether Clinton had mishandled classified information by using a server or a secret unsecured email server to conduct State Department business during her 4-year stint as Secretary of State. Comey was widely panned in July of 2016 when he recommended that Clinton not be indicted despite an avalanche of evidence suggesting she had endangered national security by using an unsecured server. At one time, the Clinton camp praised Comey to the skies for letting her off the hook, but have since done an about-face after he reopened the FBI investigation. Comey recently admitted before Congress that Clinton had lied when she claimed she did not send or receive classified information on her private email account. Thousands of newly released WikiLeaks emails show Clinton and her camp tried desperately to shade the truth about her private server and were well aware of what she did wrong. The FBI recently discovered that as many as 650,000 emails sent to or from Clinton's private email server were found on the laptop of Anthony Weiner, the estranged husband of Hillary Clinton's top aide, Huma Abedin. Abedin claims she has no idea how her emails ended up on her husband's laptop. Her claims of ignorance are truly terrifying because if Clinton were elected president, Abedin could end up being chief of staff. And here's how the letter reads. It says, officials of the U.S. State Department of Justice, former federal prosecutors and high-ranking officials of the U.S. Department of Justice, we know that the impartiality and nonpartisanship of the United States justice system makes it exceptional throughout the world. To maintain fairness and neutrality, federal law enforcement officials must exercise discipline whenever they make public statements in connection with an ongoing investigation. Often evidence uncovered during the course of an investigative inquiry is incomplete, misleading, or even incorrect, and releasing such information before all the facts are known and tested in a court of law can unfairly prejudice individuals and undermine the public's faith in the integrity of our legal process. For this reason, Justice Department officials are instructed to refrain from publicly on the existence, let alone the substance, of pending investigative matters, except in exceptional circumstances and with explicit approval from the Department of Justice officials responsible for ultimate supervision of the matter. They are also instructed to exercise heightened restraint near the time of primary or general election because, as official guidance from the department states, public comment on a pending investigation matter may affect the electoral process and create the appearance of political interference in the fair administration of justice. It is out of our respect for such settled tenets of the United States Department of Justice that we are moved to express our concern with the recent letter issued by FBI Director James Comey to 8 congressional committees. Many of us have worked with Director Comey. All of us respect him, but his unprecedented decision to publicly comment on evidence in what may be an ongoing inquiry just 11 days before a presidential election leaves us both astonished and perplexed. We cannot recall a prior instance where a senior Justice Department official, Republican or Democrat, has on the eve of a major election issued a public statement where the mere disclosure of information may impact the election's outcome, yet the official acknowledges the information be examined may not be significant or new. Director Comey's letter is inconsistent with prevailing department policy, and it breaks with longstanding practices followed by officials of both parties during past elections. Moreover, setting aside whether Director Comey's original statements in July were warranted, by failing to responsibly supplement the public record with any substantive explanatory information, his letter begs the question that further commentary was necessary. For example, the letter provides no details regarding the content, source, or recipient of the material, discovered evidence contains any classified or confidential information, whether the information duplicates material previously reviewed by the FBI, or even whether or not the material may be significant. To us is the precedent set by this departure from the department's widely respected nonpartisan traditions. The admission or the oh gosh, tongue-tied. The admonitions that warn officials against making public, and that's where it drops off. That's the end of what they have printed here. So there you have that article. The next one we have is off BizPac Review. It says, when an FBI agent refers to Clintons as a crime family, it's not partisan. Voters should really pause. Agent thinks the Clinton family has more in common with the Corleone family than with the average American. During a radio appearance on billionaire businessman and former New York mayoral candidate John, where they come up with these names, Katsmiditis, gosh, I don't know how he pronounces that. Katsmiditis, I guess. Radio show, former assistant FBI director James likened the Clintons to a crime family. The Clintons, that's a crime family, basically, he said. It's like organized crime. I mean, Clinton Foundation is a cesspool. While he praised Donald Trump, Kallstrom, butchering this guy's name, Kallstrom, who led the investigation into the explosion of TWA Flight 800, called Hillary Clinton a pathological liar. God forbid we put someone like that in the White House, he said, and he laced into Attorney General Loretta Lynch, too. The problem here is this investigation was never a real investigation, he said. That's the problem. They never had a grand jury impaneled. And the reason they never had a grand jury impaneled, I'm sure, is Loretta Lynch would not go along with that. Kallstrom put the blame on Comey and Lynch and said the agents were unhappy with how how the investigation worked out the first time. The agents are furious with what's going on. I know that for a fact, he told Katsinimus. So there you have that one. The next one we have is off of Brigaded.com. And it says, Hillary Clinton losing in the polls after FBI investigation, only a few days till election. Hillary Clinton's new FBI investigation has put real damage on Clinton campaign. Polls have her losing drastically. How will she rebound with only a few days left? Bad news for the Clinton campaign. Polls have her dropping. LA Times released poll taken on October 31st, Monday after the Friday release. The poll shows Hillary Clinton has declined within the past few days. Donald Trump is now up 3.4 in the polls before the FBI investigation. Hillary Clinton was leading in all the polls. It's clear the FBI investigation is a major concern to voters. Clinton and her campaign have insinuated that James Comey is trying to rig the election. President Obama said that he disagrees with Hillary Clinton's statements. He doesn't have any belief that James Comey is trying to rig the election. Hillary Clinton has 7 days to gain the American people's trust. There have also been rumors of major dirt on Donald Trump in relation to ties with Russia. This election has been unhinged from the start, and anything can happen within these 7 days. Oh my, it's going to be a busy week, ain't it? The next one is off of CNBC.com. FBI obtains warrant for newly discovered emails in Clinton probe as Reid accuses Comey of the hack of the I'm getting tongue-tied, as Reid accuses Comey of Hatch Act violation. This is pretty much the same stuff that we read before, but I'll kind of go over it quickly here. It says the FBI obtained a warrant to search emails related to the probe of Hillary Clinton's private server that were discovered on ex-Congressman Anthony Weiner's laptop. The law enforcement officials confirmed on Sunday. The warrant came 2 days after FBI Director James Comey revealed the existence of the emails, which law enforcement sources said were linked to Weiner's estranged wife, top Clinton aide Huma Abedin. The sources said Abedin used the same laptop to send thousands of emails to Clinton. The FBI already had a warrant to search Weiner's laptop, but that only applied to evidence of his allegedly illicit communication with an underage girl. Agents will now compare the latest batch of messages with those that have already been investigated to determine whether any classified information was sent to the Clinton server. Comey's disclosure included a few details about what the emails contained. He said the FBI learned of the existence of the emails, which appear to be pertinent to the Clinton probe, but he added that the agency cannot yet assess whether or not this material may be significant. The revelation ignited fierce criticism, citing the longstanding practice to avoid even the appearance of acting in a manner that political scale. Former Justice Department spokesman Matt Miller said that most people, when they hear the FBI is involved, automatically assume the negative. Clinton called the move an unprecedented departure from FBI policy, and on Sunday, Senate Democratic leader Harry Reid scolded Comey for potentially breaking the law. Your actions in recent months have demonstrated a disturbing double standard for treatment of sensitive information with what appears to be clear intent to aid one political party over another, the letter says. I'm writing to inform you that determined that these acts may violate the Hatch Act. The act bars government officials from using their authority to influence elections. Reid also accused Comey of shielding Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump from scrutiny over his connections to Russia, saying it has become clear that you possess explosive information about close ties and coordination between Trump and his advisors and the Russian government. The FBI didn't immediately respond to requests for comment on Reid's letter. Earlier, Comey said in an internal message to the FBI employees that we don't ordinarily tell Congress about ongoing investigations, but I feel an obligation to do so given that I testified repeatedly in recent months that our investigation was completed. The note added that it would be misleading to the American people. We were not to supplement the record. At the same time, however, given that we significance of this newly discovered collection of emails, I don't want to create misleading impression. So there's that. The next I have for you is off of ABC 7 New York. It says Clinton's renovating new house without permits, report says. I mean, these people don't follow the law on anything at all, ever. They're above the law. And they want to represent the American people? Holy smoke. Chappaqua, New York newspaper is reporting that Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton and former President Bill Clinton have been renovating a house they bought next to their suburban New York home without obtaining several required permits. The Clintons purchased the house in Chappaqua for $1 million in August. The Journal newspaper reports that town building department records show that a swimming pool at the house has been filled in, the kitchen has been renovated, and new lighting has been installed, all without permits. The newspaper says building inspector visited the house on October the 5th after his department received a complaint. The Journal News obtained the building departure records through the State Freedom of Information law request. The newspaper says Clinton representative did not return requests for comment. Holy smoke. Next one that we have here is off of zerohedge.com. And oh, by the way, you'll be glad to know I'm done with the election news for this episode. The rest of this is going to be about something else. All right, gasoline prices soar after Colonial Pipeline explosion in Alabama. And I did this story in a news break earlier, or a breaking news story, but this is an update on it. The Colonial Pipeline disruption has sparked a huge spike in the price of RBOB gasoline. Bloomberg reports that SC fuel marketer are receiving allocation notices from major suppliers after Colonial Pipeline shut its main lines on fire in Shelby County, Alabama, according to Michael Fields, Executive Director of State Petroleum's Marketers Association. As we detailed earlier, a massive plume of smoke is filling the sky after gas pipeline explodes in Helena, Alabama, according to CBS 42. Fire units are headed to the scene, according to McAdory Fire Station Number 2. Alagasco has stated that fire is from a petroleum line. According to Shelby County Sheriff's Office, the blast was on the Colonial Line with 8 to 9 people injured. It says, for those curious about the pipeline, the EIA has great primer found here, and there is a link in this where you can pull up more information and see maps and all kinds of things. Says the sheriff adds that the blast happened during crew work. The explosion took place near 334 Highway 13. At this time, a response team has been called from Jefferson County, as well as a tanker from the McAdory Fire Department. And scrolling on down through this, says Bestiva Hills Fire Department has also arrived on the scene, along with Shelby County's Sheriff Department. UAB has received 5 patients associated with explosion who arrived by helicopter. At this time, there's no word on their condition, but CBS 42 has learned that they are being treated for burns. Helena police are stating that there was an explosion in the Shelby County jurisdiction and that no Helena residents are in danger. Travel is not being impacted to students who get dropped off on County Road 13, according to Transportation Director with Shelby County Schools. It is unclear how much product is impacted and whether East Coast gasoline prices are set to spike as a result. I do know one other update that is not included in this, though, and that is that they were evacuating. Last I heard, they were evacuating like a 3-mile radius around this fire. So I think it was benzene that was in the air. So that's the latest that I know on it. The next article that I have is off of MSN.com. It says, little noticed fact about trade. It's no longer rising. The constant flow of goods from Asia to the United States was briefly interrupted last month after Hanjin, the South Korean shipping line, filed for bankruptcy, stranding several dozen of its cargo ships on the high seas. That made literal the stagnation of globalization. The growth of trade among nations is among the most consequential and controversial economic development of recent decades. Yet, despite the noisy debates, which have reached new heights during this presidential campaign, it's little noticed fact that trade is no longer rising. The volume of global trade was flat the first quarter of 2016, then fell by 0.8%, according to statistics in the Netherlands, which happened to keep the best data. It's no exception to the broader trend. The total value of American imports and exports fell by more than $200 billion last year. Through the first 9 months of 2016, trade fell by an additional $470 billion. It is the first time since World War II that trade with other nations has declined during a period of economic growth. Sluggish global economic growth is both a cause and a result of the slowdown. In better times, prosperity increased trade, and trade increased prosperity. Now the wheel is turning in the opposite direction. Reduced consumption and investment are dragging on trade, which is slowing growth. But there's also signs that slowdown is becoming structural. Developed nations appear to be backing away from globalization. The World Trade Organization's most recent round of global trade talks ended in failure last year. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, an attempt to forge regional agreement among Pacific Rim nations, also is floundering. It is opposed to both majority party American presidential candidates, Meanwhile, new barriers are rising. Britain is leaving the European Union. The World Trade Organization said in July that its members had put in place more than 2,100 new restrictions on trade since 2008. Curbing free trade would be stalling an engine that has brought unprecedented welfare gains around the world over many decades. Christine Lagarde, managing director of the International Monetary Fund, wrote in a recent call for nations to renew their commitment to trade. Against the tide, European Union and Canada signed a new trade deal on Sunday. It may be hard, however, to muster public enthusiasm in the United States and other developed nations. The benefits of globalization have accrued disproportionately to wealthy, while the costs have fallen on displaced workers and governments have failed to ease the pain. It is over. Despite the 1990s, global trade grew more than twice as fast as global economy. Europe united, China became a factory town, tariffs came down, transportation costs plummeted. It was the Walmart era. But those changes have played out. Europe is fraying around the edges. Low tariffs and transportation costs cannot get much lower, and China's role in the global economy is changing. The country is making more of what it consumes and consuming more of what it makes. In addition, China's maturing industrial sector increasingly makes its own parts. The International Monetary Fund reported last year that the share of imported components and products made in China has fallen to 35% from 60% in the late 1990s. The result, the IMF study calculated that 1% increase in global growth increased trade volumes by 2.5% in the 1990s, while in recent years the same growth has increased trade by just 0.7%. Hanjin, like other big shipping companies, bet that global trade would continue to expand rapidly. In 2009, the world's cargo lines had enough room to carry 12.1 million of the standardized shipping containers that have played a crucial, if quiet, role in the rise of global trade. Had room for 19.9 million, much of it unneeded. India is not China redux. Most trade flows among developed nations. The McKinsey Global Institute calculates that 15 countries account for roughly 63% of the global traffic in goods and services, and for an even larger share of financial investment. China joined this club the old-fashioned way. It used factories to build a middle class, but the automation of factory work is making it harder for other nations to follow. Danny Roderick, a Harvard economist, calculates that manufacturing employment in India and other developing nations has already peaked, a phenomenon he calls premature deindustrialization. The weakness of global economy is exacerbating the trend. Infrastructure investment by multinational corporations declined for a third straight year in 2015, according to the United Nations. It predicts further decline this year. But even if growth rebounds, automation reduces the initiatives to invest in the low labor cost developing world, and it reduces the benefits of such investments for residents of developing countries. The political reaction is global too. The economist Branko Milanovic published a chart in 2012 that is sometimes called the elephant chart because there is a certain resemblance. It shows real incomes rose significantly for most of the world population between 1988 and 2008, but not for most residents of the United States and other developed countries. The chart is often presented as a depiction of the consequences of globalization. The reality is more complicated, but perception is undeniable. Voters in developed nations increasingly view themselves as victims of trade with the developing world as backlash is brewing. Donald J. Trump presidential campaign is an obvious manifestation, as is Hillary Clinton's backing off from her support of the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal. A study published in April found that voters in congressional districts hit hardest by job losses are more likely to reject moderate candidates, turning instead to candidates who take more extreme positions. Economic stagnation is turning European voters against trade too. Professor Roderick said that proponents of free trade were guilty of overstating the benefits and understating the cost. Because they failed to provide those distinctions and caveats, now trade gets tarred with all kinds of ills, even when it's not deserved, he said. If the demagogues and nativists make non-essential claims about trade are getting a hearing, it is trade's cheerleaders that deserve some of the blame. The upshot provides news, analysis, and graphics about politics, policy, and everyday life. There you have that article on trade and what's going on. Next article I have is off conservativefiringline.com. And this, we get the ads shut down off of it. There we go. Slaughter continues in Chicago. 17 dead over the weekend. So much for gun control, huh? City of Chicago hit something of a milestone over the final weekend of October, racking up 17 homicides and 41 wounded shooting victims in what the Chicago Tribune is calling the deadliest weekend so far this year. That is saying a lot in a city that has already racked up at least 638 murders so far this year, and there are still 2 full months remaining in 2016 to jack that number up even higher. The newspaper said there are now 217 more slayings this year than this time last year. At least 3,662 people have been shot in the city, 1,106 more than during the same period last year, the Tribune added. Despite legislation forced by 2 federal lawsuits, one by the Second Amendment Foundation and the other from the National Rifle Association, that created a concealed carry statute in Illinois, Chicago gun control laws still remain very restricting. That is, for everyone but criminal element. Street thugs and other criminals in the Windy City still seem to have plenty of firepower. It's a safe bet that the majority of those firearms are not legally possessed or carried. Now, here's the interesting comparison. On Monday, the Seattle Police Department told Conservative Firing Line that there have been 20 homicides so far this year, and 2 of those were officer-involved shootings, leaving 18 that were the result of some criminal act. The translation? Chicago managed to rack up nearly as many slayings in 1 week or 1 weekend as Seattle has posted for the entire year to date. Compare Seattle, Chicago seems to be in a state of anarchy. Just to put things in perspective, Chicago's previous big weekend for blood in the streets was Father's Day weekend in June. That weekend, according to the newspaper, saw 59 people shot, including 13 who died. Next article I have for you is off of strangesounds.org. And any of you that have kids or grandkids, you need to pay attention to this one. Mysterious illness suddenly paralyzes hundreds of U.S. children, and doctors don't know why. Mysterious illness paralyzing suddenly hundreds of children across the U.S. continues to alarm and puzzle scientists. Children have shown up at hospitals unable to move their arms or legs. Dozens of kids have become paralyzed in the past few months alone. This kind of sudden and devastating paralysis has been widespread since the days of polio. That article is out of Los Angeles. It says Erin Oliveira waited weeks for doctors to tell her why her youngest son was paralyzed. 10-month-old Lucian had started crawling oddly, his left leg dragging behind his right, and soon was unable to lift his head, following Erin only with his eyes. She took him to a hospital in Los Angeles, but doctors there didn't know how to treat what they saw. Lucian's legs felt soft as jelly, and he couldn't move them. His breathing became rapid. The left side of his smile drooped as his muscles weakened. Physicians ran test after test, and Erin began spending her nights on a hospital room couch. After Lucian fell asleep during her only minutes alone between working and visiting 3 other kids, she cried. Terrifying reality was taking hold. Doctors wouldn't be able to give her a diagnosis for her paralyzed child. How can I make a decision for him when I don't even know what's wrong, she said. What can I do to help him? So one morning in July of 2012, Erin lifted Lucian out of his hospital bed, his body limp and heavy. She rested his cheek on her shoulder, the way he liked to be held since he'd become weak. Erin returned home to Ventura County with a child she thought might never learn to walk. In years since, hundreds of children across the country have shown up in hospitals unable to move their arms or legs. Dozens of kids have become paralyzed in the last few months alone. They suffer from a mysterious illness that continues to alarm and puzzle scientists. This kind of sudden and devastating paralysis hasn't been widespread since the days of polio. Lucian, one of the disease's earliest victims, set off a hunt among doctors to discover the cause. Before Lucian got sick, he liked to sit on the floor in the kitchen of his home in Moon Park, his small hands pressed against the glass door to the backyard, and he'd roll around babbling at the dogs outside. The child Erin brought home from the hospital didn't have enough strength to crawl and couldn't always sit up on his own. On his first birthday, 3 weeks after he came home, Erin and her husband Israel propped Lucian up with pillows and giggled as he smeared red frosting on his bare chest and his blonde hair. After the kids went to bed that evening, Erin and Israel would whisper about Lulu, as they called him. When Erin was pregnant, the couple had decided Lucian would be their last child. They wanted to save money, perhaps take family vacation. Erin would focus on graduating from nursing school. Now the future felt upended by questions about their youngest son, whether he'd ever be able to drive a car, get married, or have kids. They took him to more doctors, but that failed to bring a diagnosis, let alone a treatment. Physical therapy, Lucian eventually regained strength in most of his limbs, but still couldn't move his left leg at all. When he crawled, it dragged behind. Desperate, Erin resorted to endless internet searches looking for clues about her son's condition. Then one day she came across an article online about a dozen paralyzed kids. She immediately thought of Lucian. The article mentioned Dr. Keith Van Haren, a Stanford University child neurologist who had diagnosed many other cases, so she called him. Around the time Lucian first got sick in 2012, Van Haren was flummoxed by a young girl who'd just shown up at his clinic in Stanford. 3-year-old had been at home recovering from a bad cold when she suddenly couldn't move her arm. Weeks later, it still hung from her body like dead weight, flopping wildly when she walked. The paralysis struck Van Haren as unusual. Doctors had been treating her for autoimmune disease, wrongly attacking its own cells. But if that were the case, her arm wouldn't be so limp. Paralysis so limited to one spot, Van Haren would expect other parts of her body also to be somewhat weak. Thus, Van Haren thought looked more like most infamous cause of paralysis, polio. But it was eradicated long ago in the United States that most doctors have never seen a case. We know about it through history books, said Van Haren. In just 2 years out of training, the girl had been vaccinated against polio. Van Haren didn't know what to tell her parents. When he contacted California's health department about the odd case, he learned that scientists there had already developed a hunch. A handful of physicians had seen patients with similar symptoms and asked Dr. Carol Glaser polio. I thought, well, that's crazy. We don't have polio here, said Glaser. Then the head of encephalitis and special investigation section at the California Department of Public Health. Glaser quickly determined that patients weren't suffering from polio. She also tested for pathogens that can sometimes cause such paralysis, including West Nile virus, all negative. Then she decided to check for other viruses in the same family as poliovirus, known as enterovirus. And in some of the paralyzed patients, she found possible culprit, enterovirus D68. Enterovirus D68 was incredibly rare, almost never seen, first discovered in 1962 in California, children who had pneumonia. Though a cousin of poliovirus, it was only supposed to cause a runny nose and cough. Van Haren had never heard of it. Glaser asked Van Haren to consult for the health department, and together they watched for more paralysis cases. Their findings were preliminary, but what they were accurate. What if there was an outbreak? In the middle of the night, Aaron spent past crop fields and cattle ranches on the 5 freeway, headed north to Stanford. Sat next to her in the passenger seat, and Lucian slept in the back. Aaron had found some peace from visiting polio survivors group at Senior Center. The survivors, who reminded her of Lucian, told her they'd lived full, happy lives. Don't limit us, they said. Still, Aaron showed up for a 10 a.m. appointment with Van Haren, hoping for a chance of full recovery. What happened to your forehead? Asked Lucian. As Van Haren entered the exam room, Van Haren explained to Lucian, now 2 years old, that he had a birthmark. Does it cause pain? Lucian asked. Van Haren said it didn't, and told Aaron that the question bothered him. Aaron thought her son had insulted the doctor, but Van Haren explained that he was sorry that that was Lucian's first question. That meant, he said, Lucian knew pain. Van Haren began to examine Lucian's leg. It was 2014, 2 years since Van Haren first treated the young girl with the paralyzed arm. Who himself had small children, had grown accustomed to identifying the unique paralysis and relaying the tragic verdict. 1, 2, 3, or 4 limbs paralyzed, sudden onset, no cognitive changes. Lucian fit the bill. Within minutes, Van Haren delivered the diagnosis: polio-like paralysis, likely caused by enterovirus D68. Aaron's nose turned red like it does when she tears up. Van Haren told her there were other children like Lucian and that doctors were learning more about the disease every day. He said Lucian should continue physical therapy, but there was no cure. Chances were Lucian would never move his left leg. Back home, Aaron, who was driving, waited for Lucian to fall asleep in the back seat. Then she started to cry. After Aaron and Israel returned home with Lucian's diagnosis, the mystery paralysis began to spread. In late summer of 2014, enterovirus D68 started sending kids struggling to breathe to emergency rooms around the country. News reports called it rare, danger to children with asthma. But then, an 11-year-old boy in Texas with a seemingly normal fever lost the ability to walk and move his right arm. A 17-year-old girl in California experienced severe neck pain at her birthday party and ended up in the hospital paralyzed from the neck down. In Oregon, a 13-year-old boy's diaphragm stopped working, so he needed a ventilator to breathe. He was completely paralyzed, able only to wiggle his toes in his right hand. Whatever was happening to these children was pretty much literally exactly what polio did, said Dr. Jean-Baptiste Lapichon, a child neurologist who treated 4 such patients in 2014 at Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City, Missouri. Glazer watched from California, as did numbers of paralyzed kids grew. She became horrified that her theory about enterovirus D68 might be correct. That October, Van Haren spoke at a national meeting of child neurologists. He asked 300 specialists how many of them had seen these kinds of paralysis cases in the past few months. More than half the hands in the room went up, he recalled. Doctors coined the name for the phenomenon acute flaccid myelitis. Acute flaccid for the sudden and total paralysis, and myelitis for an injury to part of the spinal cord involving muscle movement, called gray matter. Between August 2014 and January 2015, 120 children in 34 states were diagnosed with acute flaccid myelitis. According to federal health officials, the median patient age was 7. Aaron hoped the new cases would lead to a cure for her son, but doctors say that though the disabled children can regain strength in some limbs, there's usually also some paralysis that cannot be reversed, just like polio. Scientists think a virus travels to the spinal cord and damages motor function there irreversibly. Holding the red handles of his walker, Lucian jumped up and down and told his brother Nicholas to put his shoes faster. Kids shout, skee balls thump, arcade games cha-ching. Boys stood on either side of Aaron, pulling at her skirt as she talked to the cashier at the Chuck E. Cheese's. We need tokens, they chanted. A year apart in age, Nicholas and Lucian share the same round, bright eyes and blondish hair. Sometimes they try to pass for twins. 4 years after being hospitalized, Lucian wears braces on both legs. His left leg decorated with Spider-Man designs and the right with skulls. When he uses his wheeled walker, he steps with his right leg, pulling his left behind him. His left leg is still completely paralyzed. Israel stopped working so he could take care of Lucian. Aaron often works 64 hours a week, psychiatric nurse, so the couple can pay their bills. Aaron and Israel abandoned their 10-year plan, as well as dreams of buying their oldest son a car when he turns 16 or a vacation home. Their priorities have instead become much more short-sighted. Over the summers, the big one was kindergarten. They knew Lucian would do fine academically. He often seemed precociously intuitive and observant, but would he use a walker or a wheelchair? Would he be in special needs classes? Would they be able to potty train him on time? Would he need an aide in the classroom? And the most agonizing, would he fit in? Aaron had seen Lucian sitting alone on playgrounds, watching other kids run around. Aaron and Israel stayed up at night, worrying about, joking around about who's going to bail which one of us out of jail first, she said. Lucian is too young to fully grasp his disability. He knows he can't run or walk on his own, and that makes him unlike other kids. And when he meets new people, squints his eyes as if he's trying to read their face to understand them, how they'll react to him. But if you ask Lucian why he uses a walker, he'll blame it on his older sister who fell and fractured his leg when he's 2 years old. Try that again. Who fell and fractured his leg 2 years ago. His parents have repeatedly told him that that isn't why he's paralyzed, but he doesn't seem to hear it. That half understanding sometimes protects Lucian from the pain of his injuries' permanence, but it also means each day could bring a new reckoning of his life's limitations. A few months ago, Lucian asked his parents for an injection. It'll fix my leg and it'll be like Nico's, he said, using his pet name for Nicholas. Aaron told Lucian that she had many times before. His disability is permanent. There's no miracle treatment. His leg would get stronger over time with exercise, but it would never be like his brother's. Lucian angrily pursed his lips and eyebrows tensed, and he went silent. Between June and August this year, another 30 kids nationwide became paralyzed, and scientists still don't know why. Dr. Patel, who heads the acute flaccid myelitis team for the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, said the agency is concerned by the increase and its resemblance to 2014. Experts think case numbers for September and October will be even higher. But there's not much public health officials can do because the paralyzed children officially remain a medical mystery. Virus D68, which gave hundreds of people a severe cold in 2014, also caused a paralysis outbreak that year. Some of the paralyzed kids had intravirus D68 in their system, and researchers have found that injecting mice with intravirus D68 paralyzes them. In the link, doctors need to find intravirus D68 in the paralyzed children's cerebrospinal fluid, so that the virus traveled to the spinal cord and created injury there, which they haven't yet. And physicians are still baffled that no one has noticed the possible risk of paralysis before. Some think there hadn't ever been enough cases of intravirus D68 to unmask the horrifying side effect. Only 26 people tested positive 6 years ago. Or I'm sorry, try that again. Only 26 people tested positive for the virus in 36 years. All right. Another possibility is that intravirus D68 recently mutated to become more likely to paralyze those infected. For now, experts say that intravirus D68 isn't enough of a threat to make a vaccine that many people now have immunity to the virus from the 2014 outbreak. Plus, it will probably mutate again, rendering a vaccine that protects against the current strains useless. And hope it doesn't get worse, Van Haren said. Lucian had been too excited about his first day of kindergarten to eat his Cheerios in the morning, instead unzipping his backpack and removing folders and papers. But walking from the minivan to the school, a taxing process of pulling his left leg with the right, today with the added weight of his bag and lunchbox, had tired him by 8 a.m. In his new classroom, Lucian sat cross-legged at the edge of a colorful rug, his walker to his left. When his teacher took attendance, he turned around to grin at Israel sitting in the back. Israel got permission from the school to stay with Lucian on his first day, unsure if the boy would be able to manage on his own. When Erin left an hour prior, Lucian called after her, his eyes wide with panic. Lucian's teacher, Taylor Seburn, began to teach the class a game. Kids dance to music and freeze when she shakes a tambourine. I'm going to stand up with my walker, Lucian announced to the class. The song started and Lucian gripped the handles of his walker, happily shaking his body and kicking his legs. He froze, he danced. When Severn turned off the music, the students plopped to the floor. Lucian pushed his walker back. He bent over and put his palms on the rugs to slowly lower himself. He pulled his left leg over to the right, so he was sitting cross-legged. He clasped his hands together and fixed his eyes on his teacher. Recess. Israel decided to go home earlier than he planned. Lucian seemed to be doing okay. He watched his son pull a toy out of a bin in the yard, bending his arm as he tried to land a tethered ball into a cup. Kids around him hula hooped and took turns on tricycles. A boy asked Lucian about his walker, and he pointed to his leg and sheepishly explained that his sister fell on it when they were playing. Israel walked over to Lucian, who was now at a lunch table eating a Rice Krispie treat. He kissed his son and headed to his car. Lucian, talking to the girl across from him, didn't turn around to watch him leave. So there you have that story. But I thought that was important for everybody to hear that, because you just never know who might be listening to the show and who might be going through something like this or know somebody going through this, and this might enlighten them on what's going on. What I have for you is off of Zero Hedge. U.S. trucking company slash fleet amid tepid shipping demand. For months now, we've been writing about the collapse of Class 8 truck orders. For the month of September, net Class 8 orders were down 16%, while LTM orders were down a staggering 41%. In fact, the level of trailing 12-month net orders is the lowest since January of 2011, with wide changes now in negative territory for 19 consecutive months. And there's charts in this if you want to pull that article up and look at it. It says, therefore, it should come as a little surprise that large trucking companies in the U.S. are being forced to slash fleet amid slumping demand and slack capacity. According to the Wall Street Journal, several U.S. trucking companies, including Swift, Werner, and Covenant, have all been forced to cut thousands of trucks from their fleets as overcapacity has driven down pricing. Of course, all this means is that Class 8 truck manufacturers are unlikely to see an uptick in new orders anytime in the near future, with Werner promising it won't add trucks until they see meaningful improvement in the freight and rate markets. We haven't seen any difficulty in finding trucks, said Ken Foster, chief executive of logistics company SunTech Transport Group, a broker based Jacksonville, Florida, that finds and books trucks for freight shippers. It's clear that overcapacity has driven down pricing. In quarterly earnings reports this month, Swift Transportation Company, Werner Enterprises Incorporated, and Covenant Transportation Group Incorporated said they have pulled a combined hundreds of trucks from service since the second quarter. Idling trucks is a way large fleets can quickly reduce capacity to match demand, which has stagnated this year amid uneven retail imports and sluggish growth for manufacturers. Swift, the country's largest truckload carrier, counted 581 fewer trucks in the third quarter than it did this time last year, and plans to cut an additional 200 trucks in the fourth quarter. The company's fleet tops 19,000 big rigs. Werner, the fifth largest U.S. truckload carrier, according to SJ Consulting Group, said it cut its fleet by 240 trucks in the quarter ended September 30th from a year earlier. The company posted 41% drop in the third quarter net profit to $18.9 million, and said in its earnings statement that it won't add trucks until we see meaningful improvement in the freight and rate markets. That said, we wouldn't hold our breath waiting for demand and pricing to rebound. As Barclays points out, consumer goods and imports have continued to remain very weak in 2016, which they think could presage a slowdown in household demand. Moreover, Barclay points out that amongst durable goods orders, only autos have held up over the past several months amid overall declines for the largest basket, though even autos have seemingly reached a plateau. Weakness in durable goods orders and shipments adds to our unease over manufacturing outlook and poses a downside risk to our forecast. Core capital goods orders fell 1.2% in September, a much greater than expected decline, and one that erased much of the nascent strength we have begun to perceive in the series over the past few months. Looking beyond the month-to-month fluctuations in shipments and orders, neither series has shown any tendency to recover following their steep declines in 2014 and 15. Amongst key categories of durable goods orders, only motor vehicles orders have shown consistent strength over the past few years, and even these orders have moved largely sideways over the past year as industry seems to have reached a plateau. A variety of indicators continue to point to strength in consumption growth, including a solid housing market and the 2.1% growth in morning's GDP release. Despite these signs, weaker consumer goods imports pose a risk to our outlook. Most consumer goods are imported, and therefore the consistently negative year-to-year growth rates of consumer goods imports this year could presage a slowdown in household demand. So there you have that information. And the last thing that I have for you is your feel good. I always like to leave it on a little higher note, considering all the news that we go through that's negative. Even though some of it at least has a little chuckle to it. I don't know how funny it's going to be in the long run, but you know, some of it's written well. And this one, I think, will bring a smile to your face and give you something to think about. So let's go ahead and try to do a screen share with this. And we'll see if we can get it to come up here. Looks like it's going to. Okay, we'll for you so you can see.
I miss you here too. I miss you. Addie Rodriguez knows her dad is training in California. He's a senior airman who served in Iraq and Afghanistan.
She's really tough and she understands that Dad goes away for a reason. Oh, honey, it's okay.
Saturday featured a moment Addie missed her dad very much on this field at Central Catholic High School. The 9-year-old is a cheerleader. She was performing when all the dads lifted their girls onto their shoulders.
It was really heartbreaking to see your daughter standing out there being the only one without their father.
I just felt like, because I miss him a lot.
Then Addie saw someone rushing toward her.
So I ran down from the bleachers right here, and I just hopped the fence, and I went over and I kneeled down. I talked to her and I said, "Are you okay?"
Senior Matthew Garcia picked her up.
I just saw him run to me and said, "You can come on my shoulder."
And then I realized what he was doing, and my heart just melted. I mean, it was just the most beautiful thing.
I'm glad I could help make your day.
An emergency fill-in for Addie's father, serving 1,700 miles away.
I just felt like saved my life. I thought that was so nice, especially because my dad's serving for us.
Michael Locklear, News 4, San Antonio.
have that. I thought you'd
Miss
enjoy
you
that.
too.
That's a cute story there. And it gives you room to pause, something to think about. If you happen to know of a family who is missing a parent, maybe they're fighting in the war, or maybe they're away on an extended business trip, or maybe they have actually lost a member of their family. Maybe one of the parents is deceased and the kids need a stand-in once in a while. Offer your services. It would mean so much. I mean, it might just be, just doing a good deed to you, but it will mean so much to those kids. So if you find yourself in a position where you can do something nice like that, for goodness sakes, open your heart up enough, be humble enough to offer your services. And I hope it's a beautiful day where you are. It's first day of November. Get out there, find you a place where you can kick off your shoes, stick your feet down in the grass, balance yourself, soak up the earth energy, take a deep breath of fresh air, and be glad you woke up above ground. Bye.